It's like Claude versus Brandon, where the idea is it will go through and make sure that I have a sound prompt that has achieved everything that I've asked it to do from beginning to end of the project. So I'll share this with you. I run this in the background for all projects I do with customers who I work with or clients that I work with at all sizes. And then you'll see here that eventually, after asking you a number of things to consider, it will then say, before I touch the Apollo MCP for real, what is it that you want me to do in the background, right? Now, this is a really important stopgap. There's no universe in all the times that I've worked with Apollo through the MCP that you can accidentally spend or burn credits, right? Because you will be asked very clearly, should I or should I not go and run that work for you, right? So you see, it's asked me a lot of questions, and I'm going to say, I am in the process of demoing this in real time. So instead of answering your questions, we're going to move on to the next round, right? Because I want to make sure to show you what else that I've done. We're going.
Brandon, quick question here. So, you know, when it says questions before I touch the Apollo MCP, is that something that's based on your prompt? Or are you saying that whenever you use the Apollo MCP, it will always ask you to confirm that you want to run the prompt as to avoid wasting some Apollo credits?
That's exactly right. So it will always ask you before it runs anything in the background, because credit spending behavior, especially if you don't have guardrails or stop gaps, you can burn through a ton of credits. I mean, it's not just Apollo credits either, right? If you hit the ground running, you're going to be burning your Claude credits. Well, it could be a very expensive move. So by design, we have set it up so that Apollo will pause, right? Hit the brake. Yeah,
I think that's great. And I think everybody who does like, who use OpenAI API or Anthropic API has burned credits before. So I think it's a very nice touch.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what I want to do, and just again, for the interest of like, given some of the technical gaps that we were going through, I'll explain here a little bit more about what's happening on the left-hand side. So it asks me like, how should we define a large city? How far do we actually want to go with this? Do we want to demo? Do we want to build, et cetera? And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to say, let's focus on what I mean by the term big city. I want you to go online and find East and West Coast capitals, metropolises, any type of city that would fit under large, whatever standard that may exist by population. Then when done, let's find those tech companies I asked you about who have won funding. So something that you'll notice, and I'm doing this also by design, actually some of this is cutting off, so let's kind of close some of the screen, is I'm talking to it in plain English, right? That is the objective of a tool like this. You don't have to get fancy. You don't have to make sure to say to them in a specific way. Simplicity is key, right? Now that said, from like a cost efficiency standpoint, you'll see that I do there's a lot of redundancy as I'm writing. So what I'm saying is, hey, what I mean by big city is West Coast capitals, metropolises. I could keep the list going. The more information you give it, the less likely it is to hallucinate. Now, as this is thinking, where I want to show you in terms of what this ends up looking like is it provides me an output. And for what it's worth, I just did this last night. All of this that I'm showing on the left-hand side, I did this in an hour, right? In terms of what a refined output looks like. So it provided me, here's a list of cities in the West Coast. Here's the population. Here are some of the signals that you should consider, the signals that a Claude used in terms of determining if they're like a good tech company. Same thing with the East Coast. And then after that, I say, okay, based on that information, how many qualifying companies can you find? So as you can see here, it says I've kicked off research in the background. Give me a second. In the meantime, just hold, right? So this is why I did a lot of the work on the left-hand side, so that we don't just sit around and wait to see what's happening with Claude. But where I'll end up taking this is I'll say, okay, you found all of those cities that I want. Now find the companies. And so you'll notice same behavior. You get an alert that pops up right up in your face. Hey, this is going to cost credits, at least 1 credit per city, right? For city search. Do you want me to proceed? Great. Let's go ahead and continue. And so it actually then goes and finds 497 individuals who we want to reach out to, right? It says some folks said screen is not visible. You can all still see my screen. Is that correct?
Yes. So I think sometimes it would be good if you could just zoom a bit on some of the things that are being written, just so people see.
I see.
But for the most part, I see it. One clarifier, and then some people were asking as a small summary what you did, because some people arrived a bit later. So if you could do a very quick rundown of what you prompted from the beginning for the people who were on the wrong link. And then
sure.
One of the question is, people are wondering, why do you need to do this within Claude Code, and why can't you just use Claude or Claude Cowork for that?
Yeah, great question. So let's start with the second question, and then I'll go to the first one to segue back into what we're doing here with Claude. So yes, you can use Cowork. I have a tendency to use Claude Chrome because I find that it's more efficient in terms of credit spend. I also am able to process a lot more information. So an example of that is, do you see here how I provided a PDF because I wanted Claude to understand the context of the fake company that I created, right, for this project. But what it would look like for all of you is being able to feed what are the objectives of your project. So maybe creating assets like if you have battle cards, if you have pitch decks, if you have assets related to objection handling, value proposition, right? All that stuff that you want to feed. Now you can feed that in Apollo. We have a section in your Apollo settings called the context center. It's a great way for you to feed all that information in, right? Alternatively, you can just dump it in here and then parse the information out and then just print the output to Apollo. There's good use cases for both. Like if you're an agency managing multiple relationships, you probably want the latter, submitting that information per terminal. Claude Chrome. I do that all the time. Thank you, Angelo. It's Claude Code. Yes. But thank you for the catch. There's too many C's with Claude. Chat, Code, Chrome, Cowork. But yeah, so there's that answers that question. Now, what we're doing here, just for context for everyone else, is that we're asking the Apollo MCP to provide a list of tech companies who we're eventually going to go out and ask them to have coffee with us in a sequence, right? And that's what I'm doing here on the right-hand side. And what I've been working through now, just for the sake of time, because I know we were delayed a little bit, is going through really step-by-step how we got there, right? And I think the key thing here is all I did was kind of ask back and forth. So for example, here it says waiting for one background agent to finish. I can even say, hey, what's the holdup? Right? I'm just using that as an example. I would never actually do that, but you could see here it's still researching. So what's really cool is that it's doing research online to help us determine what these cities are, to then find companies we want to go after. Looking ahead in the search here, I've said to Claude, okay, now go to Apollo and find me actual companies now in those cities, right? And so what it did is it said, okay, we're going to consume 1 credit per city. It then provided me this list. It found 497. And it says, look, this math doesn't work if we're trying to invite everybody, right? Because the original prompt says we want to invite them for coffee. This is what I love. So what I ended up doing is I turned the chat before creating a sequence into, hey, can you also help me arrange my schedule and calendar so that I can make sure that this is actually possible for me to do, to go and have coffee with all these people before we draft the sequence out and share incorrect information. It figured out how many meetings that would be. It even gave me a timetable, all off of one question, right? Which is help me arrange my schedule for East and West Coast visits so that I can go ahead and send a sequence out with that information. And by the end of this, if I scroll all the way down, it finds the right people. And then now it actually starts drafting the email. Now you might go, whoa, Brandon, you're like going too fast. Like, did I miss something? This all came off of one singular prompt. What you're not seeing here is that there's a number of questions that Claude will ask me that I answer for clarification in real time while it's working. That aren't visible here because it's in kind of like the thinking portion of Claude. So you'll notice, like, here's an example, right? So now it says one catch, locking this list, moving straight to Apollo. So you see how all this is thinking? All I asked was, hey, let's focus on what big city means when you're doing this research. It is still doing all this math for me. I can walk away and now do this for whatever other campaign I have. Maybe I want to cook dinner. You know, I can have this going on in the background. This is stuff that if you were doing this directly in Apollo, you would have to be building directly. You'd have to be sitting in front of your keyboard, and now Claude can do this for you within the same chat. Same thing that's happening here, right? How do we make sure it's not hallucinating? Oh, great question. I saw Neha asked a question. Actually, let's go with Charles. This is over engineering. There's no way you would do this. I actually am copying this from an organization that I have set this up for, who went out for coffee. So what we did for that organization is we used the Google Maps coordination link, the latitude and longitude of the company's location. And we use that to find a coffee shop in a 10 to 15 block radius to invite them for coffee. So I'm actually building this on a real example. It is not over engineered, but it's a good shout. The next question is, how do you make sure it's not hallucinating? There was I'll bring that up again. So this is the core of all the work that I do in Claude. I will share this with you. This has come from months of working with customers at Apollo. It is what I call my prompt doctor. And what you can do is you can plug it in and basically make sure it qualifies itself. The little key phrase that you may have missed earlier in the chat is I basically say, I'd like for you to be my devil's advocate. In my Claude, the term devil's advocate means it knows to run that skill.
And Brandon, I think like two questions that we missed because like you were showcasing some of the prompts that were interesting. One question from Raul, he asked, are you working in a specific repo with context? Then we have like one from Connor who asked, why are you working in the terminal versus the desktop app?
Yeah, so that's a great question about, let's start with the context. And I might ask you to rephrase that second one. I didn't see that second question. But so the first one, yes, contextualizing or like creating this, setting this up in a certain environment. So I'm just running this off of my like actual physical work laptop, right? I could run it really from anywhere as long as I log into the same Claude account on any terminal, right? In theory. However, the real question is like, what about the context of my business, right? So the best place you're going to do that is, again, so in your Apollo account under settings, there's a very important section that almost every business I start with forgets about. It's called the AI Context Center. The AI Context Center is a place for you to load up almost the psychological profile of your business, objection handling, value propositions, etc. You can start by putting your URL in, and Apollo will generate it for you. Now, here's a tip. There's a bottom section that says products and services. Don't just think about that as products and services. We have customers who we support who we will create like agentic context. So maybe what is the tone that we want to use, words that we never want to say, perspectives that we want to take. All of that feeds the MCP.
And what else can you add to this context center, Brandon? So for example, I think that I was looking at it and it was mentioning that if I were to put my URL, it would come up with some context on its own, but would I also be able to import my call transcripts to connect my CRM?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned transcripts because transcripts will be one of the latest endpoints, raw transcripts for your conversations that we'll be planning to expose to the MCP. So if you don't want to have to go through manually in platform to find those transcripts where maybe you've had like your best talk tracks to feed that context center, soon you'll be able to use Claude and then ask, hey, what could you see from my raw transcripts for me to pull? And that actually takes me to, I think, a really good, just like a refresher and also just baseline. Whenever you're in doubt, it's important to just ask Claude what it can do. I think in the age of AI, and I'm guilty of this, right? I think we forget to critically think sometimes. And what I mean by that, right, and not being antagonistic to anybody, again, I do it all the time as well, is when I'm in doubt, instead of looking at the screen and going, where can I start? I love to ask Claude, what can you do? So for all of you, to just show you the proof behind the pudding, right, is when I was asked to join this call, this session, right, I was told, these are the things that you're going to go through on the session. I said, okay, you know what I did? I copied and pasted the Slack that was sent to me. And I said, this is what we want to do. What can you do? Like what you come up with the idea and what can I use to build off of it? And it ends up coming up with all of these different versions of like sequencing and scenarios. Do you want to, like, what are some ICPs that you can go after, the sentence structure? So don't just feel like writer's block, right? There's no need for that in the age of Claude.
And Brandon, one thing I see is that there's some copy that has been written. I wonder who wrote the copy. Is it Claude on its own? Is it, say, Apollo's dedicated skills? Is it like your dedicated skills where you inputted your best frameworks and then based on that, it wrote the copy?
That's a good question. So you're basically referring to, for example, this here, right? The different, so I love this. So Claude produced this for me. Okay. I had no involvement in this other than giving it information about what my business does, who I am, the goals of the sequence, right? Or the goals of the project and the people I wanted to go after, right? Now, for any of you here who go, I always forget about like making sure that I have all my main food groups, right? Think about it as a plate. You want to have all your main groups there. That's the goal of the prompt that we'll share with you that I use, my little devil's advocate prompt. It helps me find gaps in my prompting and make sure that I do better, right? Or sometimes when Claude is hallucinating, I'll say, you're not quite getting it. What would help you if from me in terms of like what I could say to make you operate the way that I want to? In this case, it actually understood 100% what I was going after. The one thing that it ended up missing was going out for coffee. So this morning I checked back in and I said, hey, we wanted to invite people for coffee, and look at that. It actually created 7 agents. All I did was say, you forgot the coffee part or the lunch part. And then it goes and starts matching for coffee and lunch venues in these areas. And then another place that I could refine is say, okay, but I don't want to invite anybody to just any coffee shop in New York. Let's also match the coffee shops to the specific area or region that they're in, right? In that 10-block radius for that company, right? So again, all this done in a thread. In total, it took me about an hour, right? So let's see here. Any other questions that we have? A lot of value on, I'm in the new contact center and it doesn't show to upload files. Oh, you can just raw copy paste them. And if there's a format to your documents that you're feeling won't translate over, again, great example of dumping that into an AI and saying, here's the document. What can you do to honor the best possible format?
I think Claude didn't have his answer to his question, I think, the desktop app versus terminal.
Oh yeah, we're looking at terminal, right? So if I'm in Apple or if I'm in a MacBook, I just go view, new window, right? Here's a new window. And I just go Claude.
Yeah, but he asked, why do you use the terminal to do your work versus just using the Claude desktop app?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Again, it really has to do more about like not just comfort, but I think there's an efficiency component to it. It's also an interface that I am more accustomed to. It's also much easier. It takes a lot less bandwidth for your computer. You can click and drag into it. Also, if you're somebody who's given terminal complete access to your Chrome, let's say if you're running multiple sessions, just for the sake of keeping things clean, if I was to, let's say, if I had Chrome running on the session, if I closed out of this chat, it would also close anything else that I have available and open. It's all about tidiness and efficiency. This is where you have to be careful, right? Eventually you will get multiple projects going. It's important to get acclimated to digital workspaces. It's just, yeah, to Will's point, it's way, way faster. Yeah. This would have, in Cowork, I've run similar prompts in Cowork alone, and not even code, and it would take hours, probably half the day. I mean, especially because it operates off of screenshots, right? Versus like accessing API. Any other questions? How are we doing on time? Are we doing good still? I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
Amazing. Is there anything that you wanted me to show specifically? If not, well, why don't we play around with this? Let's go to the full version here of what I've created, right? Yeah. Since we've caught everybody up to speed. So
I think what would be interesting to Brandon is that, I mean, you know how we've seen the prompt being written out, then we've seen the agents work, and I think that the sort of aha moment of what's cool is when we see it then inside of the platform.
Oh, within Apollo? Okay,
yeah,
let's see.
Apollo.
Yeah, so let's see if I can. This will be the tricky part. Let's see if it'll let me push. That has nothing to do with you guys. It's more about the way we have our Apollo set up, but let's try it. So can you push a sample copy / version of your sequence to my Apollo account now? Do it in platform. It may just say that it's already built it, because a lot of this stuff is iteration until you push it. That's fine. Let's give it a second. Doing this through Claude Code will also help with the AI email sequences. Yes, Laura, that is exactly it. So it'll create placeholders for you in the different emails. Based off of the research that you're doing in Claude. So you're basically just front lifting the AI research instead of having it done within the platform using a power up. You could combine both if you wanted to. Let's give this a go. All right, calling on the MCP. It may take some time.
Yeah, for the ones who just came, sorry for the technical issue. It's on our end at ColdIQ. We sort of like misconfigured the live. But just like as a summary, what essentially happened today is that Brandon made like a 12 line sort of prompt, and then it went on and built some automated outreach campaign that looked at people, I mean, like at companies who were raising funds that were in big tech companies, cities, and then it wrote some automated copy. And then he explained, how he prompts Claude in a way that makes sure that it doesn't just agree with everything he does and just checks his work end to end. And now what we're about to see is the campaign that has been written out being pushed live inside of Apollo. And so like the beauty of running everything inside of Claude Code is that instead of having to click 25 buttons and just like spend a lot of times inside of the Apollo platform, you can actually just prompt Claude Code and then you have the agents doing the biggest chunk of the work for you.
Okay, perfect. So now for you all working in your own accounts, this will obviously look a bit different to you. We've got at Apollo, we have like a master Apollo account. So we're limited in some of the things that we can do. Can you see? I think you can see it, but it basically opened it and displayed it, right? But understanding, of course, that a lot of this information is missing because it's not actually related to my Apollo account, right? So either way, though, for you, if you were to build it, it would generate these placeholders for you, right? We're just running a test. Now, if you actually wanted to see something, you can say, okay, when building, you built the sequence, but I can't get a feel for the dummy data / placeholders you've put in the body. Select a contact and run research on them so we can populate their email / sequence effectively and give it a test. Now you may ask, why not just say do it for everybody? Again, it's about credit spend. Until I feel confident about something, I will never run at scale an update similar to what I just did here, right? So for example, if Ali Fowler ends up being the contact that is selected, that's fantastic. If not, Apollo's going to tell me what contact it ran the test on so I can select their name here. Just in the same way, I don't know if you saw, when Apollo created the sequence, it actually gave me the link, right? Now at this point is when I actually start using terminal next to Apollo. It's important because, okay, great, I can see a sequence and what the copy looks like, etc., from terminal, but we do not receive emails in this format, right? It looks something more akin to what we're looking at here. And so for that reason, that's when we begin to transition. So like split screening it is going to be very helpful for you, right? To just beta test the quality or quality control. So it looks like we found someone. You've got a great competitor with Bassetin, right? There's a real competitor, Fireworks AI. Now I need a real contact there. It will consume 1 credit. Do you want to proceed? Yes, let's go for it. Let's go for it. Then give me the name of the contact and the link to open on my browser. So I think at that stage, you can effectively see, right, how we can go back and forth until we're ready at a point, and then we can turn it on. And then let's see, yes, they are running it on Sonnet. Yes, we are running it on Sonnet. You can choose whatever plan you want. You don't have to have a specific Claude plan or Claude model to run the MCP, by the way. Probably should have led with that, but an important thing to denote. But you can see here, right? So it's done generating, right? A pattern we hear often, etc. Talking about traffic, we have, we will like be in a certain city. Would you like to have coffee, etc. Oh, look, it actually found somebody, Amir. Super cool.
Amazing. And then some people are asking, I mean, David is asking if Claude Code created a sequence or if it was pre-existing manually.
No, this was not pre-existing manually. It actually created this right now. In fact, I should be able to see in our sequences. Let's see. I want to be able to, it just did. Yeah. So you can see here, it's the only sequence that I have on my account. I just pushed it and it's the same link here. So if I click into this, I don't know if you can see the URL. Yeah, you can right there. You can see it's the same URL that it provided me. Where'd it go? Right here. Same one. Which model do I suggest to use? Fantastic question. We talk about this at Apollo as well for waterfall. Just because a vendor has a higher credit doesn't mean that you should always use it. In fact, every day will work best for you. So I only use higher models for deep research. So enrichment, identifying audiences, maybe doing research on what's a good like coffee shop to find, et cetera. But the compiling and aggregating of that information, once all the research is done, can be handled by something a little bit lower, right? So in Apollo, we have the platform. If you were to use AI within Apollo, we support Haiku and Sonnet. But the sky's the limit if you have your MCP develop a sequence for you, right? But again, just be cognizant of your credit spend.
Okay. I guess we saw the whole demo, Brandon. So perhaps
Yeah,
we could open a Q&A.
let's do it.
Amazing. Guys, let us know if everything was clear. And please, it's the time to ask any question you may have. We have 10 minutes here. We've got Brandon here. So anything you have, shoot. It's your time.
Who's meeting these folks for coffee? That's a good question. I don't know who caught this earlier, but I actually took this from a real breathing example for an organization that did use this to meet individuals for coffee, but to find funding for their own business. Pretty cool use case. But again, you could think about it also for maybe a client dinner for a trade show, something like that, right? Similar approach. Yeah, devil's advocate is what I use as the term for my prompt. We'll send out, or not a prompt, but a skill. We'll send this out to you. It's a skill that I use to basically qualify the work that I'm doing at any given moment. It just makes sure that I have the right benchmark. So anytime I see Claude hallucinating, I run this through and say, how could I have prompted you better so that we get you back on track? What do you think is the most impactful or time-saving use case for this connector? I mean, the biggest thing is that it's easier to talk in plain English to Claude than it is to learn a whole new platform. Like if you're a novice at Apollo, I wouldn't take it on myself unless you really love tools the way that I do. Sometimes it's just easier to open a chat window and have a plain English conversation with Claude to get the same work done. You can effectively do almost all the same things that you could do in the platform in Claude now, or any area that connects to our MCP. So OpenAI, Sonar, we have a standalone MCP as well. Let's see what else. Is Terminal available on Windows or only Apple? So on Apple, it's Terminal. I think in Windows, it's still called Command Center. But yeah, you can use it with Windows as well. You can connect Gemini with the standalone Apollo MCP. So it is there. I'm not sure if we have a direct connector yet, but we can always follow up after this with that information about the MCP. Biggest differentiator using the MCP versus the Apollo AI assistant. I love this question. So the AI assistant is really good at regurgitating information to you from Apollo about what already exists, right? What is saved, actions that you've taken. It also helps you evaluate like your different saved filters, what we call views or reports, or maybe the success of your sequences. Think of Claude as like your net new. It's your prospecting agent, right? So this is going to be how you do. When I say deep research, I mean, I have an organization who works with food brands, and they've been really struggling to use Apollo's interface to find brand managers for those organizations. And so what I did instead in Claude is I said, hey, go do research on this one major food brand, find all the other food brands that they own, and find all the brand managers under those food brands that they own, and then go enrich their information with Apollo. That's the value of the MCP versus using the assistant. Heather, great question. I'm confused on what my tech stack needs to look like to make this happen. Very simple. Whatever computer you have, so let's say if you have a MacBook, then Terminal. If you have Windows, again, I think it's Command Center. But once you have that, you install Claude on your computer, and then you go into Claude and say, how can I get this working on my terminal? And I know that's not a full answer, but the reason that I'm saying that is that that's a great GTME response. Have Claude tell you what to do. And if it says it in too complex of a term, say, dumb it down, give me more information, say more, say less. It's actually how I've been able to set up my entire environment instead of relying on other people to tell me how to do it, because everybody has a unique use case. So if you have the tool tell you how to do it, then you can figure out what matters to you. Let's see what else. Are you testing shorter? Evan, I love this question. I love when somebody plays a devil's advocate on devil's advocate, so I appreciate it. Yeah, definitely for the purposes of the demonstration, the goal was to show speed to lead, right? So how quickly I could find somebody and then go to a message. There are a bunch of things that I could have done differently, especially towards the end. One of them is to just continue qualifying and refining the messaging because maybe it wasn't as refined as I wanted it to. It's always difficult when you're playing like a fake company. But to your point, we could always refine it to another persona. We could maybe have broken it up into smaller sequences. I think I probably packed too much into one. So that I can focus on targeted teams or groups or management levels. So there's always room for iteration. What's great is that you could just use that same chat window, right? And you can say, hey, I decided that I actually need to make this into smaller sequences. How can we get started? Instead of nuking in and starting with a new window. So I think you have the exact right idea, Evan. Gigi, will you invite me for coffee? If you're in New York, sure. Let's see what else. Any other questions? Would the Apollo assistant would ever be as good as using the MCP? Good is good. I'm actually so happy you said this. So the word good is really depends on the person, right? So you need to be careful when you're using these words, when you're talking to Claude. I know it feels subjective, but it is a game of semantics when you're using AI. I think like grammar for me and vocabulary has become so important in a way that it never has before. There's a difference between good, great, and best. And what that means to me is different to you. So to answer your question fully, right, when you're talking to AI, I think the AI assistant is good to help me in a moment, right? I don't want to leave the platform. I need some support unpacking what I'm doing. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I don't know where to get started, right? The catalyst, the inflection point. Claude, I sit down and I say, this is the exact full breadth of the project that I need to do. And we're going to break down each and every step until you get me closer to what I want. It's almost like an architect versus the digestive friend. So that'll be the difference between the assistant and the MCP. Have I used Fable for big campaigns? That's a great question. I have not. And by design, we do a lot of intense, I'd say, like process architecture and data integrity work for things like deduplication or helping organizations operate at scale. That's when I'm going to use Fable, deep thinking, or leveraging the Apollo MCP to create some reports, right? That's always going to be a really good use case. And actually, if we pause for a second here, deviating a little bit, but I think something that's important is you have the ability to do some really cool stuff like, I don't know if you can see my screen here, but you can create your own dashboards or reporting. Oh, this is an old version. Let me get like a much better version. 1 second. But that's what I would use Fable for, like deep thinking at a level that even Apollo can't do on its own, right? So like if I wanted to see the efficacy of sequences, by the way, I built this in Claude. So if you want to understand what you can do with Claude Terminal, I basically said, Claude, I'm really tired of reports that aren't pretty. They don't work for me. They don't make sense to me. I'm going to give you examples of reports that have resonated with me that I found online, that I think other developers have done a really good job with, things I found on GitHub, Reddit, etc. And then what I'm going to do is feed it dummy data until I get it to a place where I want. And now associate this or attach this to the Apollo MCP. What data points can I fill? Everything that's visible here is visible using the Apollo MCP. And you might ask, like, how did we get here? Why did we do, or like, how did you start? Same theme that I've shared with all of you up until this point, which is I just asked Claude, if I wanted to create a report, what are all the data points that you could reference within my Apollo account? Oh, this is dummy data, but thank you, Liam, for the response rate output. I would not be showing real data to all of you, but thanks for the catch. Thanks for giving me the chance to preface that. Share the prompt for this report. Is that what you're asking for? John? Yeah, for sure I can. Easy. I could keep going. Are we short on time? I think we got like 2 more minutes.
I mean, I think we are at time, so you
Yeah.
can either keep responding to questions or otherwise perhaps suggest that people follow you on LinkedIn or, I don't know, whichever place to then ask the remaining questions.
Yeah, totally. I think that's actually a great idea. Why don't we do that? If you have any questions, bombard me on LinkedIn. I'm around. If we get enough of the same types of questions, I can work with the marketing team to spin some content for you. But I appreciate it, guys. This was exciting. I could talk about this until I'm purple in the face. So
amazing. Let's share Brandon's LinkedIn here if you have any question, and then let's see each other on the next one. Thanks for the amazing demo, Brandon.
yeah, absolutely. No, thank you. I appreciate it.